I met Madison at a fancy girls' school hidden on a mountain in the middle of nowhere. 100 or so years ago, maybe even longer, all the men who had managed to make enough money in such a barren landscape decided that they needed a school to prepare their daughters for the eventuality of marrying some other rich men, moving up in life until no one remembered a time when they had been anything other than exemplary. They brought some British guy to Tennessee, and he ran the place like a school for princesses, and soon other rich men from other barren landscapes sent their daughters. And then after this happened enough times, rich people in real cities like New York and Chicago started hearing about this school and started sending their own daughters. And if you can catch that kind of good luck, it holds for centuries. I grew up in the valley of that mountain, just poor enough that I could imagine a way out. I lived with my mom and a rotating cast of her boyfriends, my father either dead or just checked out. My mother was vague about him, not a single picture. It seemed like maybe some Greek god had assumed the form of a stallion and impregnated her before returning to his home atop Mount Olympus. More likely it was just a pervert in one of the fancy homes that my mom cleaned. Maybe he was some alderman in town and I'd seen him all my life without knowing it. But I preferred to think he was dead, that he was wholly incapable of saving me from my unhappiness. The school, the Iron Mountain Girls Preparatory School, offered 1 or 2 full scholarships each year to girls in the valley who showed promise. And though it might be hard to believe now, I showed a fucking lot of promise. I had spent my childhood gritting my teeth and smashing everything to bits in the name of excellence. I taught myself to read at 3 years old, matching the storybooks that came with records to the words the narrator spoke through the little speaker. When I was 8, my mother put me in charge of our finances, the weekly budgeting from the envelopes of cash that she brought home at night. I made straight A's. At first, it was purely out of an instinctual desire to be superlative, as if I suspected that I was a superhero and was merely testing the limits of my powers. But once teachers started to tell me about Iron Mountain and the scholarship, information that my mother could not have cared less about, I redirected my efforts. I didn't know that the school was just some ribbon that rich girls obtained on their way to a destined future. I thought it was a training ground for Amazons. I made other students cry at the spelling bee. I plagiarized scientific studies and dumbed them down just enough to win county science fairs. I memorized poems about Harlem and awkwardly recited them to my mom's boyfriends, who thought I was some weird demon speaking in tongues. I played point guard on the boys' traveling basketball team because there wasn't one for girls. I made people in my town, whether they were poor or middle class, especially upper middle class, feel good, like I was something they could agree on, a sterling representative of this little backwoods county. I wasn't destined for greatness, I knew this, but I was figuring out how to steal it from someone stupid enough to relax their grip on it. I got the scholarship, and some of my teachers even raised enough money to help cover expenses for books and food, since my mother told me flat out that she couldn't afford any of it. When it was time to start school, I put on some ugly-ass jumper, the only nice thing I owned, and my mother dropped me off with a duffel bag filled with my stuff, including 3 changes of the school's uniform black skirts and white blouses. Other parents were there in their BMWs and cars so fancy I didn't know the names of them. "God, look at this place," my mom said, heavy metal on the radio, fidgeting with an unlit cigarette because I asked her not to smoke so it wouldn't get in my hair. "Lillian, this is going to sound so mean, but you don't belong here. It don't mean they're better than you, it just means you're going to have a rough go of it." "It's a good opportunity," I told her. "You got shit, I understand that," she said, as patient as she'd ever been with me, though the engine was still idling. "You got shit, and I know that you want better than shit, but you're going from shit to gold, and it's going to be real tough to handle that. I hope you make it."